Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. As you can see, Shannon is not here today. I am continuing to do some fill-in, a little pinch hitting for her, and we'll be hosting the show solo this week, which, let me tell you, is nowhere near as fun as when I have my good buddy, fellow autism mom and dear friend next to me. Shannon, I know you're watching. I'm going to get you on the horn before the show ends, because I love to talk to you about some of the things that took place during Ask Dr. Doreen and this hour. I do want to let you know that we are continuing our Autism Family Portraits segment. We have a dad here today, one of my favorite dads. His name is Doug Baker. He is really a leader in the autism field. He is an advocate, a financial consultant. He has a young adult son with autism, and he is a wealth of information on so many aspects of having a child with autism, including how to plan for the future. But today he's here specifically to talk about his son, Scott, and his journey as an autism dad. And he has so much to share with us. So we're going to get to that after we do some in the news stories. Now, I want to apologize for constantly having to look down and read. We don't have what they call a teleprompter in the television business, which if you see anchors in the evening news that just look straight at the camera and you're wondering, how do they remember all that? Well, they're not remembering all that. What they're doing is they're reading something that rolls down, and you can get very proficient at this and look like you've got the best memory in the world. We don't have that here, so that's why I have to frequently look down at my notes and at the articles, because memorizing them is just not a possibility in this crowded brain of mine. So we have some very positive stories and some touching stories that are in the news today. First off, is Asperger's funny? Is Asperger's funny? That's a good question. How do you laugh at a disability? This comes from Esquire.com, and it's about a producer by the name of Mark Duplass, whose name or face you likely know from The League, Togetherness, or countless other projects with his older brother, Jay. The Duplass brothers produced Asperger's Are Us. It had its world premiere at the South by Southwest Festival. It's already among the buzziest films of the festival. This was dated back March 13th, so very recent. It's a documentary about a comedy troupe of the same name, Asperger's Are Us. A story about four men who fall at various points on the spectrum and turn that fact into a comedy. Shortly after the film's premiere, Netflix announced that it scooped up the distribution rights, so you're sure to see it very soon. This interviewer had a beer with Duplass to talk about the project, the nature of the streaming, and what it feels like to laugh at something at the surface appears to be painful. I, for one, believe we should always have the ability to laugh at our circumstances. Laughter is what gets us through, but obviously we have to do that in a way that doesn't offend. And I think because the four men that are the subject of this documentary are on the spectrum themselves, it certainly is coming from the horse's mouth, so to speak. So the interviewer asked him how this came to be. It was a pet project, and he said he joked about it, but it was true. All false modesty aside, he was seen as a person who can take an independent film and blow that up. And he said he had a feeling it was going to be good, and it's about the nature of being human. And when asked whether he thought it was a movie about Asperger's, he said he saw it as a coming-of-age story about four friends first and foremost. He said it's a slightly hyperbolized version of exactly how I operate in the world. As an artist, he set out to show people, don't give me your pity. If I'm good, I'm good. If I'm not, fine. So you can go ahead and look at this, continue to read this interview. The question that was posed to him, is Asperger's funny? Great question. I'm the last person in the world to answer it. I'm a producer of a documentary who doesn't actually understand this world fully. What I can personally relate to in the movie and what allowed me to feel comfortable is to say, I know I can help with this movie. And there's a specific thing called the comedy of discomfort, okay? So that's what he's out to do. And he says he's a cheeseball at heart. He loves an underdog story. And we are really interested in seeing this. And I would like to get Mark on the show. So we're going to get working on that. And maybe we can get him on as a future guest to explore this a little bit more. Asperger's Are Us. So be on the lookout for that documentary. Two charities in England are calling for mandatory training on autism for all teachers. The letter calls on Nick Morgan, who, it doesn't say who he is in this article, to include autism training. An initial training teacher framework is currently under review. They have written a letter to The Guardian, influential paper in England, calling for all teachers there to be trained in autism, saying that without this, children with autism are at risk of being misunderstood and marginalized, bullied, etc. The letter calls for autism to be included in all training. The signatories include MPs and school staff. It was put together by the National Autistic Society, otherwise known as the NAS, and Ambitious About Autism. The campaign argues that more than 1% of children on the autism spectrum, almost 3/4 of those in mainstream schools, and virtually every teacher will have an autistic child in a class at some point. They note training connected to autism is not mandatory, while some teachers have no training in special needs of any kind. The chief executive at NAS, Mark Lever, said thousands of autistic children are being disadvantaged every year. He added, this is one of the reasons that children on the spectrum are 4 times more likely to be excluded than those without special education needs. He continued, we don't expect teachers to be experts in autism. However, a basic knowledge of lifelong disability and where to go for extra help would make a huge difference to these students. For instance, many children on the spectrum are sensitive to light and sound, that an overhead light or humming computer can be physically painful. It's almost impossible to follow a lesson. Simple changes like seating arrangements so the student is away from the light, letting them wear ear defenders, can make a huge difference. An NAS survey last year found that 58% of children on the spectrum said the change would most improve school for them. That would be the most important change for them would be for teachers to better understand them. Separate research by Ambitious About Autism found more than half of parents who had kept a child with autism from school because a lack of proper support is there. That's a shocking statistic. Half of parents have kept a child away from school because of lack of support there. So there's also been a lot of interest coverage in the case of Matthew Garnett, a 15-year-old with autism. Shannon and I covered this story 2 weeks ago, with autism, ADHD, and anxiety, who spent 6 months in a secure mental health treatment unit because of a lack of specialist care in the school. A Department of Education spokesperson said, we want every child to receive the best education possible, including those with special educational needs or disabilities. They said that all teachers are already trained in how to support children with special educational needs as part of their teacher training. And on top of that, we have commissioned an independent group of experts to develop a new framework for core initial teacher training content. It would seem that parents think otherwise. So, Navy funds autism screening app, hopes for help with PTSD. The Navy is paying for research into an app to screen for autism in hopes that it could be eventually tweaked to look for signs of post-traumatic stress disorder. So that's a really interesting development. I'm going to get to a final few in the news stories after we get to our first guest, Doug Baker, as part of our continuing series, Autism Family Portraits. So please stay with us. We'll be back in a moment to hear from this exceptional father. We are back with Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. It's Nancy minus Shannon as she's recovering from pneumonia. And I am here with our Autism Family Portrait series, and we have a friend of the show, Doug Baker. You've been on before, Douglas Baker.
A couple of times.
Yeah, good to see you, my friend.
New studio.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know. Isn't this great?
You need a teleprompter.
We need a
There you
teleprompter,
go.
but Kelpie's got it all going on here and handling it for us. Doug Baker is a specialized family consultant, speaker, advocate, specialist of autism in the special needs communities. As a parent of an adult son with autism, he has over 20 years of experience navigating the system, resources, agencies, professionals, legal and financial demands. He hopes to help educate. He periodically takes stabs at writing and publishing, and he is one of the few nationally that understands and integrates the legal benefits and financial strategies around the lifestyle demands of parenting a child with autism. And if that were not enough, my friend, you spent 2 decades as a sales and management executive in the technology industry, implementing process improvement and infrastructure systems into some of America's largest finance, healthcare, education, and technology organizations. Woo, Doug, I'm tired. Are you?
Well, there's a lot to learn out there. I haven't stopped, you know.
You sure haven't.
Yeah.
I first met you at a conference, I think, Autism Society. It was called The Future Is Now.
Down in downtown LA at the...
In downtown LA. That was a number of years ago.
Correct.
Yeah, and The Future Is Now, and they were damn right about that, excuse me.
Yeah.
They were darn right about that. And the future was a long time ago, and we are late on this bandwagon, and I want to talk to you about that, about where our young adults are today, because we spent time yesterday with the Autism Works Now people, Joanne Lara and Susan Osborne, who are doing job training. Not sure when that's going to air. Kelby, is that going to air on Thursday, or you don't know? We think it might air tomorrow, but we're going to keep you informed on that. So at any rate, Doug, we're here to talk about you and Scott today. And we'll talk a little bit about your mission and your work, but tell us about Scott. Oh, and first let me just say, you're not only the father of Scott, who will be 26 in April, but you are the father of Christine, who is Scotty's champion as a young sister. She'll be 24 in April. And tell us what you just told me about Christine. She's tougher than Scott?
Well, my son Scott with autism is a lot easier to raise than her at this point in time. She's a 23-year-old young adult trying to figure it out and trying to learn to love herself.
When she's got that done, will you have her call me?
Yeah, okay, I will, sure.
All right, so tell us about, when was Scott diagnosed, Doug?
Well, Scott was diagnosed at about 22 months, probably earlier than most families were back in the early 90s. But his issues all started within a week of his MMRs.
A week of the what?
MMRs,
His
the
MMRs.
mumps, measles,
Okay.
rubella.
But let me ask you, are you a parent that's considered anti-vax, or
No,
you?
no, I'm not considered vaccine. I don't like when parents overdo 10 or 15 vaccines at once. I think that
so
could
you're
overload
a fan of
anybody's
spacing them out and
yeah.
caution.
I think I looked
Like
at
me.
I think I looked at the vaccine as the straw that broke the camel's back.
Okay.
I overheard Doreen talking earlier about the number of toxins
Yes.
in our systems, and I really, the toxin phenomenon has really started over the last 120 years in our world, especially the United States, and so through a few generations, I just think it's weakened many of our genetic capabilities in the environment and
Sure.
certain things going in there. I mean,
Along with antibiotics and many other things, right?
sure, absolutely.
Yeah. So it was the MMR that you said was kind of the straw that broke the camel's
It
back.
seemed
what happened?
that within
It
a
seemed
week
like it,
he
yeah.
stopped. He had about, this was about 13 months old. He had about 25 words.
Right.
He had started walking actually at 8 months. He moved really from
So similar to Wyatt. You and I have talked about this.
He didn't even go to the hands and knees crawl. He kind of
Yeah,
went from the army
neither did
crawl
Wyatt.
to furniture walking and boom.
Right.
And it's back in 1992 when he was diagnosed. We didn't have an internet.
That was kind of the dark ages,
It
wasn't
was
it? Though?
really scary. 3 in 10,000 births were autism.
Right.
And when we finally did get diagnosed, we were almost 8 months pregnant with my daughter.
Okay.
And then it was, you are 25 times likely greater to have a child with the same or worse conditions. So as you can well imagine, the mother of my children at the time was frantic.
Okay. Your ex-wife.
My ex, I call her the bio mom. She was never, I don't know if she deserves to be called an ex-wife with the way, there's never been a good relationship. The hardest thing
Okay.
has been in my relationship with my son has been his mother.
Okay, and we'll talk about that
Yeah,
later
and
too.
we
Let's
can
get
get into
back to
that.
when the diagnosis. So,
And it was actually from, when Eric Courchain, Autism Center for Excellence out of San Diego, when he was a young researcher, he was one of the guys on the team that diagnosed my son back in 1992. So we went through the marching of learning about this strange phenomenon, and when the meltdowns were going down in supermarkets when Scott was 5, 7, you had to focus on the kid, and you'd get all the comments, and
Bad parent.
and
The looks.
I would often turn around and say, hey, you know what, the kid's autistic,
Right.
And you get some people that go, well, there are a lot of artistic kids out there. No, you didn't hear what I said. So yeah, you were a bad parent, and you
shaming.
just had to learn to focus on the child and finishing and trying to redirect him so he stops his meltdown. Even after 10 minutes, you have to continue to stay focused there, not worry about what anybody else thought.
Right.
And that's just where you just get in your life. And then as we get older and they get older, we don't care what other people think anyways.
right, that's right. That's one of the good things about getting older, right?
Yeah,
We
correct.
just don't give a darn.
Doesn't matter. Not everyone's going to be happy.
That's right. So, okay, so it was 1992 or
He
thereabouts.
was diagnosed. He was born in
Uh,
1990.
Right, and then clearly there was not a lot of ABA back then. So
There was no ABA. Well, actually, ABA was offered.
It was.
It was a
okay.
private program out of this new group of it at UCLA.
Right.
It was 40 hours a week. It was something, I think at the time, was $4,200 or $4,500 a month.
Right.
Back in the early
And
or
obviously no
mid-90s.
insurance coverage then.
And
Regional center?
Regional Center was there, but Regional Center, like everybody, even today, they got a zip lip. They're not going to tell you anything.
Right.
Because if they say that you deserve these, law says that they have to tell you all the services available. If they do that, they'll be out of money in the first 3 months of their fiscal year.
Right. Their job is to protect their money,
Protect
like so
their
many
money.
others.
Like a private nonprofit
Right.
being paid by the state of California, which I still don't really understand
Yeah.
how that works, but okay.
Okay. So he did not get any intensive ABA.
He did get
Early.
intensive ABA early. No, there was
Okay.
no such thing available.
All right. What did you find was most helpful to Scott as he continued then to get a little older and was he in the public school, private
Yes,
school?
he
What?
was in
Okay.
public school most of the time. I would actually say the best thing that happened to my son was his sister being born. And the reason being is because as they started going, he knew in the back of his head, you could see it, that he was older and he should be doing the stuff that she's doing, but he wasn't. So she dragged him along, which was kind of like a great, what do you call it?
She was like a
She was a
teacher's
great
aide.
windbreak.
Yeah.
She was teaching him, and he was in her wake. He was learning along that she was learning.
Right.
And they have always been close. They're not as close right now, but right now, that'll change.
Of course.
Because she lives out on her own. He still lives with his mother in Costa Mesa. I have him 2 or 3 weekends a month, plus any extra time. And anytime I can get him off work and do something special when I've got the free time, we'll do that as well. So, in fact, I wasn't able to bring him, but I brought pictures, and you'll notice I've got pictures of he and I all over the place. We always take a quick pod picture with my
Kelby,
camera.
are you popping any of those up, my friend? I'm going to ask Kelby to pop a few of those pictures up while we're continuing to talk so people can see Scotty.
There's another thing that just was natural, and that was to kindly push him along the way. And in fact, that's a new book that Temple Grandin just came out with, is you want to push your children ever so gently, but you want to
Yes.
keep pushing
Yes.
a kid with special needs in order to be better.
Sure.
And when I talk to parents, I often expound the virtues of having your kid become independent. Because once your kid comes out of your household and learns to live in a independent or a group home or something, they take on more responsibility for taking care of themselves. But when they're at home, they've got the parents to do things for them, so the kids aren't as driven. So the more you could push them out in independence, even as little as independent as they may ever be, the better it is for them. So,
So you're a big proponent of teaching independence and probably teaching vocational skills early.
Tremendous. In fact, I encourage every one of my families to start their transition planning at 14.
Right.
Even though it's a law to be in place by 16, the schools won't do it until they're 16.
Yeah. No, you have to start. You have
to
start early. So before we go to break, I just want to know what. As a dad, I mean, it's a whole different thing to be a dad. My husband Reed struggled immensely with it.
Oh, we all do. We deny. One thing men tend to do is we don't want to get involved, so we want to make the money and make sure the money's there and let them get the services. And in the back of my head, it was always, well, just kind of mysteriously came on. So we pray that it mysteriously goes away.
And it doesn't.
And autism doesn't typically do that. And I've met thousands of families, and I can't tell you how many families, probably half of them will blow through their retirement savings trying to cure their kid.
The magic bullet.
The magic bullet.
Yeah.
And had I caught some of these families earlier, I might have been able to help them save some of their money and keep them from wasting it and thinking about the future.
Right. I mean, we know intensive early intervention works. We
Correct.
know
and
intensive ABA,
Correct.
and it's
Correct.
proven. But we're talking about, situations where families are sending on all kinds of unproven
chelation therapy, hyperbaric chambers. I mean, some of these things have good places.
Some kids respond to individual treatment.
And you do. Every so often you'll get a kid that responds, and then, then the next 2,000 don't.
Right.
But the doctor, in the meantime, has made a lot of money along that way.
Right, and you've got parents that are off pursuing stem cell and what was the parasites that people were, kids were eating worms and stuff. And, there are all of these so-called cures that we know it's not, there is no magic bullet. And even the top biomedical doctors, like Dr. Andrew Levinson out of Florida, will tell you there is no magic bullet. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. But as a father, Rodney Peete wrote a book, Not My Boy.
Yeah.
You guys have this hope and dream to have, the next baseball player, the next whatever it may be. And instead, you get a son or daughter with autism. It's devastating, isn't it?
It was very difficult for me. I found that I love working with kids. And actually in 2002, I stepped away from technology to help advocate for Scott. And it took me a few years out of technology, which took me a few years too long, and then they didn't want me back in. It turned out to be 10 years, and it was a very expensive jaunt or stint of education, but it taught me things that you'd never be able to learn in a textbook. You'd never learn unless you lived it. Unless you're living, breathing, eating it, and next thing you know, you've learned all these things, and then you're kind of like a hope of insight to younger parents. And I just found that, in fact, I was in financial services for a while, trying to help families with special needs and help them with their money. And I found that the money side wasn't even important. It was helping the family with their challenges and needs. So I stepped away from financial services, and now I'm just a consultant. And now I just work with kids, and then I get a lot of practice from my own son.
Right.
Because in fact, today I'll drive back down to South Orange County, and I'll pick him up this afternoon, and we'll be in the gym tonight to work out. And I try to get him in a couple days a week because he likes that health thing.
Yeah.
And he's really good at it.
You said that some of the things that have been most helpful for Scott are structure, routine, encouragement, gentle flexing, and expanding routine and socialization.
Correct. Anytime you can take him out of his comfort zone of what we call his routine.
Okay.
Is building the skill.
Because that's that order he's trying.
He's used to. It's like it's 12 o'clock. It's lunchtime.
Right.
It's funny because we've gone to events, and you go there and it's 2 o'clock and there's a spread of food.
Yeah.
Scott's not eating. Well, I'll eat at dinner.
Right.
It's like, Scott, at dinner, this food's not going to be here.
Right.
So I'm going to recognize. So sometimes before we even go to an event, I said, we're going to a party. I said, there's going to be food there, but I said the way it's going, there won't be dinner. So we're going to have to eat food as we go. So if you prepare him,
Right.
he's good with it.
But if you don't prepare him,
If you
there's
don't
anxiety.
prepare, then there may be a little anxiety because now all of a sudden it's 12:15 and I'm hungry. Well, Scotty, we ate at 9:30. It doesn't matter, but if at 9:30, I said, well, you know what? We're having breakfast late, so we'll probably have a late lunch today. Probably one or two.
So you prep him.
I kind of prep him, but other times I let him go to that side, a little anxious, and I said, well, no, we'll get there. Just we're almost there and so forth. So I have him, So he's really good
You're
with
breaking the comfort zone.
that. You break the comfort zone for building those executive skills.
Yeah.
Of being able to adjust on the move.
Right, like
And-
we have to in life.
And
yeah.
we talk about it all the time.
Right.
So life's not a routine.
Right. No, it sure isn't. Okay. Well,
It seems like a routine, and you're getting it all over the place, but no.
All right. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk about where Scott is today, what he's achieved, and just some of the pride you take in him now.
My
Okay.
my 6'4", 11-year-old. That's what I call him.
All right.
Thank you.
We'll be back with Autism Family Portraits, featuring Autism Dad and pioneer in the field of parent advocacy, Doug Baker. And we are back with Let's Talk Autism with Nancy flying solo, missing Shannon, but we'll get her on the phone in a little bit. We are with Doug Baker as part of our Autism Family Portraits, and there is Doug. Your son is so handsome, Doug, and so are you.
He can grow more hair on his face than I can.
Yeah,
I mean, this is me 4 days without shaving.
Yeah, and 6'4". He's a tall kid.
Yeah, he's just about 6 feet. He's just a tad under 6'4", and he's I call him my 11-year-old mentally, but he's some parts of him are older and some parts are younger.
Sure, there's always splinter skills that our kids have.
And he is a wonderful kid. He touches so many lives. In fact, when I go places and people have met him, and then I see them again, they go, oh, they always ask, how's your son? Yeah. Or where's Scott? Or like, when I moved out of South Orange County in 2010, and he used to go to the gym with me down there, and then I was out for 5 years, and then I moved back down there at the end of this last year. It was the people that, that he knew 5 and 6 years ago that would come up and say, Scott, God, I haven't seen you, whatever. It was really kind of cool.
Yeah.
So,
how'd you get him into fitness? Because I want to know. I'm trying to get my boy.
It was. I've always done it, and when he was younger, when he was about 14, he would get up in the morning and he'd want to watch, the TV and the videos and stuff like that. On the weekends, I had him, so I'd bolt off to the gym for an hour and a half, and then I'd come back, and he'd still be and he'd know to get cereal and that to have his breakfast. And I just started saying, why don't we go to the gym together? We were doing bike riding and so forth. And the next thing you know, he started in. And
he probably looked at it as a way to spend time with you, too.
Well, he was chubby until just past 13. Okay. And in fact, there was a couple pictures in here I noticed that it was just before and just after he went through his growth spurt. He went through this growth spurt about 13 or 14, and all of a sudden, boom.
Yeah.
We weren't worried about him being chubby anymore.
Right.
So, but he kind of grew, and he was about 6'3" by the time he was about 16.
Okay. But a lot of our parents do worry about weight problems with their kids.
Yes.
Some of our kids tend to overeat
Correct.
Excessively. And but you really encouraged him to do fitness with you.
Well, and I'm encouraging him to cut back on some of those bad foods like the chips. He still likes his soda every day. I don't even drink soda. I'll take a taste of Dr. Pepper here and there, and so forth. But and he was at one time he was at about 231 pounds, but he had a little bit of stomach. So I said, well, Scotty, I said, you'll look a lot better, and you feel a lot better if we drop about 10 pounds. So we got him down to about 227, and now he's down to about 225.
Okay.
And this is over about 6 months.
Yeah.
Where 8 months. So now our goal is to get to 222, and then we're kind of working our way down to about 218.
Okay.
We can get him down to 218, close to how much I weigh. Then he'll have those little mushroom tops and stuff, whatever stuff that's bothering.
You said in our pre-interview and when we asked you how you encouraged Scott, you said lots of love and lots of treats. Today it's all love.
Today it's all love. Yeah, when you were younger, encouraging the good behavior, and so forth. Obviously, there were treats involved or whatever
Yeah,
it
the
was.
reward system.
The reward system.
Basic ABA.
Today, it's all love. And then he never forgets, Dad, you have my allowance for me. I love it when he
Pretty
tells you-
typical there.
He's pretty good about, what? He knows about the money in his pocket. I still don't think he knows the difference between $2,000 or $200,000, but he knows what a couple $100 is, and he's proud. He works.
He works. Tell us
he
about
works
where he's
5
working.
days a week in a Goodwill program
Okay.
at Marshall's.
Uh-huh.
And he's been there about 2.5 years.
Uh-huh.
And he works from about 8:30 to about 12 or 12:30 every day.
Okay.
And so
And then after that?
there's a dry process. I think there's 3 kids in his work group of 4. So he's usually home by about 2. He relaxes for a little bit, and sometimes during the midweek I'll pick him up about 3:30, and we'll get to the gym when I have time. And then Saturdays or Fridays and Saturdays, a lot of time when I pick him up right after work, we're at the gym Friday and Saturday, and Sunday we go to church together. Usually, how that all works.
Right,
Sometimes we go to
right.
church Saturday night. He doesn't like that because then I can take him to the gym again Sunday morning.
Right, the routine is
The routine.
is messed up.
Yeah.
So he's working. He is living with his mother.
Lives with his mother
But spends considerable time with you.
as much as he can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so at this point, with Scott being 26, with mild to moderate ASD,
Mm-hmm.
what are your hopes and dreams for him from this point forward, Doug?
Well, it would be great to have him getting into more of a, animal handler skill.
Okay.
He learned how to care for horses.
Right.
He could probably be a pretty good kid around a barn.
Okay.
For cleanup, for walking horses, for doing that kind of stuff, washing. That would, Scott is all about cowboys.
Uh-huh.
He's all about the cowboy stuff. He's all about the train, the steam engine trains. I mean,
Right.
his goal would be to move to Colorado, work for the Durango-Silverton Tourist Railroad, and be an engineer.
Well, but he could possibly do something close to that.
Correct. And it's I've kind of tried to encourage him to finish and get a high school equivalency, which in the right circumstances he could. He got in some trouble in the junior college programs and threatened a kid, so he's no longer invited back there. So I'm trying to get him back on an online program this year, see how well he does, and then see if we can kind of segment out to where he might be able to get a high school diploma. Because that way he would be smart enough and maybe have the focus enough to potentially drive a car. Now,
Right.
will he ever be able to drive a car? I don't know. I don't think so. But
I don't know that any of us are going to need to drive cars in the future, Doug, because haven't
They'll
you
all
heard
be
about the
self-driving.
self-driving cars? And,
That's right.
and everybody's doing Uber and all these other things. So if I had the option of not driving, I'd sure take it.
See, now I love driving.
So-
I had to take my dad's car away when he crashed it when he was 90.
Yeah.
And like even today, he's in a wheelchair and he looks at me like, I need a car.
I need a car.
I got it. You don't know what it's like not having a car.
That's a guy thing. That's a guy thing. Wyatt wants to drive right now. He says, why do I have to wait till I'm 16? Well, he's nowhere near ready to even learn to drive, but he always wants to. He says, I want to talk to the police and change the law.
But at 16, you could have Wyatt get evaluated for driver's training through the Department of Rehab.
Okay. Well,
Now-
you are a wealth of
Well,
information.
and trust you and me, I consume a lot of information from a lot of advocates and so forth. And one of my real good advocates was, she had a couple of kids, and she was the one that told me that 6 years ago. She goes, hey, I had my kids in the Department of Rehab at 16, and you can't usually go in there till they're 18. But if you call Department of Rehab and say, do you have this program, no one will tell you they have it.
Well, they do keep these things, secretive. So,
Like the school system, like the regional center, like
right.
yeah.
So, I think we need to have you back and get some specific questions that you maybe can help me and Shannon
Sure.
work up about things parents need to know, because you've walked this journey.
Well, it's all out there. In fact, it's funny because I had a meeting with a couple this last week, educated couple and so forth. We sat down, they were concerned, and some money were in their daughter's name. And as we started talking, and it's funny because I feel like I went through a law school because I could spout out all sorts of stuff because I've just learned it. And then afterwards, he was kind of saying, well, he says, we're really interested in getting that money out of our name, and if ABLE accounts were available in California, we could do that now, but you didn't know enough about it. I said, well, it's not legal. It's not available yet. But we went through a few other things, and, they paid me for my time, but, they said, well, we could do all this stuff because all this stuff's ready available. Of course it is. Does anybody do it, or do they pull them all together and say, is this organized?
Right.
And that's the problem. There's so many things out there that are readily available, but most of us don't have the time, energy, or effort to be able to pull it together.
Of course not. We don't have time to be full
And,
of
and I've written articles about what are the 13 most important things families need to know. That's on Autism Speaks.
Okay, well, we need to have you back.
Yeah.
And
we could start going through a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, we'll have you back to talk about that. Kelby, are you telling me I have 1 minute left for the whole show?
Are we?
We're going to call Shannon. No. Okay. No, but we have a limited amount of time here with you. Okay. Did this take a toll on your marriage?
Yes.
Okay.
The marriage.
And I don't want to get too personal here.
No, my mother's children. I mean, there was a lot of things that happened in that marriage, including her mom marrying my dad.
Okay.
They said a couple of years after we were married.
Show.
That was my dad's wife number 3.
That's a reality show, Doug. That's a whole other thing.
That's a pay-and-place deal.
Okay.
But yes, there was a self-blame, then there was a blame game, then there was just the anxiety. And then that's where our parenting skills came out to be completely opposite.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you 2 questions here before we wrap it up. What advice would you give to couples that have a child who's diagnosed, maybe a little younger, they're going through some rough patches? How would you encourage them to get through this journey together?
Well, the first thing I always tell them is typically it gets better. As they get older and get more, go through the maturity and so forth, it gets better unless they're a serious self-injurious, violent, then you may have a problem because now you have a child that can be a 100 or 120 pound girl or a 200 pound boy or 300. I've seen some big guys.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you've got a whole nother set of circumstances.
Right.
And the unfortunate thing is they don't really know what they're doing. They don't know how to control it. They don't know how to deal with it. But had they been born a regular child, they might have been a linebacker in the NFL.
Right.
So,
of course.
It gets better.
Okay.
Number one.
So try to stick it out with each other.
No. The beauty, and I've seen some great relationships, and realistically, the special needs child, in most ways, especially if you are a spiritually strong family, should bring the family closer together.
That's what happened with our family before my husband passed away. He learned a lot, and he, said, I'm not good at this, but you take the lead, and I will follow in your footsteps. And we became stronger people of faith, and we became more committed to one another. I won't say it was easy, but it definitely brought our marriage together, and I do think that there is something to be said for that, and I know there's stats on that too. Okay, last thing, but we are going to have you back, I promise, to talk to give your 10 most important things you would say to parents to do. We're going to have you back in the future, but if you could say anything to the dads that are listening, what would you say?
Learn to love your kid, learn to accept him. They are going to be there for you, and they will love you like you've never been loved before. That was probably the hardest thing. It took me about 10 years in my acceptance. And once I started accepting my son, there's no stopping it.
Very famous man once said to me, who has a son with autism that is not publicly known, when his son got a job, I said, "You must be so proud of him." And he looked at me with tears in his eyes, and he said, "I am." And he said, "But you know what? I've never told him that. Don't do that with Wyatt."
Yeah.
So thank you for those words, my friend.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Doug Baker, thank you. You're such a pioneer and leader in this
Maybe
field.
one of these days I could get Scotty out here, and
we'd love that.
You'll see that beautiful little smiling.
We'd love that. What a handsome boy. And I know you're proud of him. All right. We're going to take a really quick break, and we're going to come back with Shannon Penrod.
Hey, Nancy. I just want to say so much thanks to you. You have been such a rock. You always are in my life. But, man, I said this to you yesterday. You just you always amaze me by showing me more and more how much you are who you are, and who you are is awesome, and you have so been there for me this week and have filled in, and just amazing to think you're doing all of that in what is probably one of the toughest hours of your life. I just so appreciate you. You're such
I
a good friend and such a good person.
I so appreciate you, and as I told you, if I can do 1/10 of what you've done for me over the last year, it will. It's my pleasure, and it also, when I spend time with our families and with Dr. Doreen and with some of the people in our community, it is a wonderful, wonderful balm for my grief. And I know that my spiritual director, Sister Greta, says that the best way to heal yourself is to be of service to others. So hopefully I have been
Well,
of
you
some
always
service.
are.
Okay.
You always are.
Well, thank you,
Our
darling.
viewers are great people.
All right.
You've done a great. This is a great show. I've been riveted to it.
Good.
So thank you.
Now let's talk about your pneumonia for a second. Are you going to get over this?
Yes, I have every intention. I am getting better. I'm so much better than I was, and I have a doctor's appointment this afternoon. The hope was that she was going to let me come back to work tomorrow. I'm not really seeing that happening.
I don't see that
But-
happening, and I don't see that that's a necessity, right?
Well,
Did you hear Doreen talk at the top of the hour?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. And if I could have spoken up, I would have said, I so appreciate hearing that coming from the two of you, because I know that you also, as does Dr. Doreen, we all struggle with, when is enough and taking care of ourselves. But I appreciated hearing it. I've had so many people write to me and say, slow down and take care of yourself. I'm getting it. I'm learning as I go.
Okay, so I wanted to get into this Is Asperger's Funny movie, but I think we're going to have to shelve that to next week because you are a
Great.
fan
Well, we'll
of.
talk about it next
Yeah,
week.
you're a fan of
It
that
should be-
filmmaker.
It should be showing up on Netflix any day now.
Okay, and you're a fan of Mark Duplass, right?
I am. I love togetherness, and I think that he and his brother do some amazing, cutting-edge, fabulous stuff.
Okay, do you agree we got to get him on the show?
If we can, he's one of the hottest tickets in Hollywood.
Well,
but
so what? So are
yeah,
we.
Sure.
So are we.
But yes, and I think he really stepped up and produced this film when somebody who he worked was on the crew said, "Hey, I'm doing this. Will you look at it?" And he looked at it and said, "This is just too good. I got to help out here." So big kudos, big thumbs up to him.
Definitely.
I can't wait to see the film.
Now, I do want to just touch on really briefly a very touching story that we're going to end the show with. Los Altos High to host Sweethearts Prom in memory of Hacienda Heights couple. Shannon, you covered this couple. Los Altos High School here in California is hosting a Sweethearts Prom next month for students with disabilities in memory of the Hacienda Heights couple killed last year in a car accident. High school sweethearts Sabrina Castillo and George Stewart died the night of October 18th after their pickup was struck by an airborne vehicle. Since then, their parents have talked about how to ensure the 18-year-old couple's memory lives on. Castillo's mom said she thought hosting a dance for disabled students would be a great way to honor the teens who loved going to school dances at Los Altos. Volunteered at Parents Place, a center in West Covina that supports families with special needs children. Because her daughter would often do her friends' makeup and hair and share her dresses with others, she wanted to do the same for other students. The dance scheduled for March 18th is free. It's obviously just happened. Complimentary hair and makeup were done. And what a beautiful story, right, Shannon? What a tragic yet beautiful story.
I mean, two huge lights on this planet that went out, but their mothers, I'm going to cry. I can't imagine the loss that they're feeling of these two wonderful human beings, but especially Sabrina. Sabrina was always so involved with autism, and she and her boyfriend did everything together, and so these two moms have honored their memory in such a beautiful way, and I really feel like the autism community needs to embrace these two moms for their loss and for being so positive in their loss.
Yeah.
They really have done something amazing.
Such great examples. And just on another note, Shannon and I want to send our love and our blessings to everyone in Belgium today. And this just horrific, horrific terrorism that is going on. All we can do is say, we're deeply, deeply sorry, and we send our love and prayers. So, Shannon, please rest, and we may see you next week. You won't be back tomorrow, but we may see you next week. I hope.
But I think Kelby and I are going to work out so that there will be a show tomorrow, because you taped some amazing interviews yesterday, and I taped an interview already last week. So I think we're going to work it out. There will be a show tomorrow, but I just will not be there live.
Okay. Well, do you think that Autism Works Now program might run?
Yes, I think Kelby and I have got it worked out so that can still happen.
Okay,
share that.
That is something that I don't want our viewers to miss, because I spent an hour with Joanne Laura and Susan Osborne and 4 of the adults that are doing the program. It is so inspirational, so don't miss it. All right, Shannon, get back to bed. I'm going to say, you want to give your regular sign off?
I want to say thanks to everybody. Thank you to you. We'll see you when we next see you. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me.
And give yourselves a hug from me. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye for now.